Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today to basically share some of the latest information about Malaysia e-invoicing, right? Our last session was probably back in December, which I think a lot of you have been asking a lot in terms of what's happening and so on. And I think we also did a partner briefing last month as well. And with now, after the full testing with PayPal and LHDN, we are ready to release a beta version this week already. So that's why we have started this session. So this session, we are going to really run through a little bit in terms of the whole journey that what we have done over the past 6 months together with MDEC and PayPal, and also what our planning in terms of our timeline, in terms of how do we get ready, especially for those which is on phase one, to be ready for phase one and for the phase two as well in that sense. So without further ado, I'll pass the session to City, which will run us through in terms of the whole e-invoicing that we have built for Sage X3, what we call a EI, which is the e-invoicing module in that sense. Over to you, City.
Okay, thank you, Chitong, for the airtime. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for joining our Sage X3 Malaysia e-invoice. My name is Siti Sharifah, and I am your presenter for today. Without further ado, let's take a look at our agenda for today. Okay, so in the agenda chapter, we will bring you back to understand what is this Malaysia e-invoice. Just some brief explanation, some brief sharing to all of you so that you can have a better understanding. Okay, then after you come back from this webinar, we want to share with you what are the checklists, what are the things that you need to get ready from your side to get ready for this Malaysia e-invoice. Okay, and we will also share with you where are we now for the Sage X3 e-invoicing, Malaysia e-invoicing timeline. We will share with you what we have done so far, what are the ongoing process, and when actually our final release will be released. We will share it during invoicing timeline, Sage X3 e-invoicing timeline slide. Okay, and of course we will have a live demo so that you can visualize what is this Sage X3 Malaysia e-invoicing and how actually we capture all the requirement from LHDN Malaysia. Okay, and if you have question, you can basically ask during the Q&A session, or if you have question earlier, right, you can actually type in your question in the chat box. We will address your question, of course. Okay, enough with the agenda. Now, let's see the timeline. I know most of you already know about this timeline. You're probably aware of this. Okay, Malaysia e-invoice is a big hit in the market nowadays and everywhere in the news. So basically, we just want to share with you. We just want to bring back to you when actually we will kickstart. The first kickstart will happen in the 1st August 2024, whereas it is mandatory to all taxpayers. I mean, to all companies, to all businesses or taxpayers that have annual turnover more than 100 mil. Okay, and in the second phase, which happened in the 1st January 2025, it's mandatory to all taxpayers who have income revenue, annual revenue that is more than 25 million up to 100 million. So if your company revenue per year is actually between this digit number, then your timeline is actually start in the 1st January 2025. And final phase, yes, it is mandatory to all taxpayers starting from the 1st July 2025. Okay, all right, so enough with this timeline. Malaysia e-invoice model according to LHDN. Okay, some of you probably haven't seen about this one, maybe. Okay, so we want to share with you according to LHDN how actually the Malaysia e-invoice model work. Okay, so the first one, right, you need to issue a e-invoice. Okay, you can either use My Invoice portal or API. API in this terms, right, means that integration between your Sage, for example, you are using Sage X3. Okay, API means it's an integration between Sage X3 to the LHDN server itself. Okay, then after you have issued your e-invoice, then you need to submit your e-invoice. Obviously, you need to submit your e-invoice to LHDN. Okay, and then LHDN will actually validate your e-invoice. Okay, and if everything is succeed, right, no false information, no duplicate information happen, everything is succeed, they will actually come back with you with a unique identifier number. Of course, this done behind the door. You will not see if you are using Sage X3 API. you will not see this UIN, unique identifier number. Okay, everything is captured and then stored into the database. Okay, so in the step 3, according to LHDN, you will have a notification. They will actually send a notification to the supplier and also to the buyer itself. It's either via the My Invoice portal again or via the API. So means that, right, if you are using Sage X3, from Sage X3 Malaysia e-invoice, you can actually get a validation of your e-invoice, whether it is valid, whether it is invalid, whether it is rejected, or whether it is cancelled. We will see this during the live demo session later. I will show you how actually you can see your invoice status from LHDN after it's get validated. Okay, so in point number 4, right, LHDN require you to sharing your e-invoice with your buyer. Okay, again, in step 2, after your invoice get validated, here, right, LHDN will actually send the API is a unique identification number, UID, and then it is your duty actually to share your validated e-invoice with the buyer, embedded with a QR code. Okay, don't worry. For Sage X3 Malaysia e-invoice, right, we have embedded a QR code inside your report. So means that, right, when you print your report in Sage X3, and if this invoice has been validated, right, it will be embedded. It will automatically embedded with a QR code inside your report. So you just have to email this report to your customer. You don't have to do anything. Okay. And in the step number 5, right, it's actually more on the rejection or cancellation of the invoice. For example, you as a supplier, yourself as a company, right, okay, you want to cancel your e-invoice, you can actually issue a credit note and then send it to ILHDN using the API as well, using Sage X3. But for your buyer, right, if they want to reject your e-invoice within 72 hours time frame, okay, they have basically 72 hours, which is equal to 3 days, yes, to actually reject your invoice after they get your invoice. Okay, they receive your validated invoice, then they get actually 72 hours time frame to actually reject your e-invoice. Okay, and in the step number 6, right, according to LHDN, you can actually get the list of e-invoice transaction that has been sent to LHDN, okay, via My Invoice portal. In Sage X3 Malaysia e-invoice, right, that we have developed, you can actually see the summary of your e-invoice that has been transacted to LHDN. Okay, we will, of course, we will say it during live demo session later. I will show you how actually you can retrieve your past invoice that has been sent to LHDN. Okay, so yeah, we know how actually the My E-Invoice model work. Okay, now to understand what are the fields that you need to submit to LHDN. Okay, according to LHDN E-Invoice Guideline version 2.3, these are the information that you need to submit to them. Okay, out of it is just optional. It's not optional, but take note on those that is in the white color. Okay, those in the white color is actually a mandatory field. I don't have to explain to you what is the supplier TIN number, registration number, identification number, or SST, or supplier tourism tax number. Okay, all this information is actually captured in Sage X3, and you just have to maintain it in one-time setup. Okay, all right. So you know what is the field that you need to submit. Now you want to know how actually you want to submit your e-invoice to LHDN Malaysia. Okay, according to LHDN, again, we are copied from their guideline actually. Okay, this is what we are extracting from their guideline version 2.3. You can go to LHDN website to get more information on this guideline. Okay, according to them, there are 3 ways for you to submit your e-invoice. Number 1 is using manual submission via LHDN My Invoice portal. Okay, so to be honest with you, this LHDN My Invoice portal is actually developed by our LHDN, our government side. Okay, we haven't seen this one yet because LHDN haven't released it to public yet. But according to them, based from our conversation with them from last session, previous session, according to them, this My Invoice portal is very similar like our e-tax filing. If you're very familiar with e-tax filing developed by LHDN, then you will know how actually the interface will look like. Okay, first you need to log into this My Invoice portal, and then for all these required field for the submissions, right, you need to fill in this My Invoice portal. Okay, imagine if one day let's say in 1 month, you have 100 invoices that you need to submit to LHDN. And if you opted to use manual submissions, right, then your finance people, person you acting to this, right, your key person to enter all these fields, right, will be very busy entering the data to My Invoice portal. That's why we don't want to look into option number 1. So for option number 2 and also option number 3, right, is basically an API that is provided by LHDN. One is through non-PayPal technology, another one is through PayPal service provider. Okay, for Sage X3, right, we are actually using option number 3 through a PayPal service provider. Now, maybe you are start thinking, okay, what is this PayPal now? What is this PayPal? Okay, we will explain to you in the next slide. Before we explain what is PayPal and everything's right, I just want to bring you to summary of characters for this Malaysia e-invoice. Who are the cast of characters for this Malaysia e-invoice? Who are actually the bodies behind this Malaysia e-invoice? Okay. Number 1, we have IRBM or LHDN. You know what is this body? This is our Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia, or Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri Malaysia, which basically their task is actually collecting money from taxpayers. Okay, so enough with that introduction. I know everyone know about LHDN and IRBM. Okay, now what is this PayPal? Okay, what is this PayPal? PayPal, or Pan-European Public Procurement Online, is actually a global bodies that is based in Europe, and it's actually they are actually have a standard and specification to enable cross-border ERP. Okay, and what is this MDEC? Okay, MDEC is our Malaysia Digital Economic Corporation. Okay, they are actually responsible for setting guideline and specification for digital interaction. Okay, they are actually is the one who bring PayPal to Malaysia. Okay, and what is Sesame? Point number 4. Sesame is our access point provider. In order for you to send invoices to PayPal network, right? Okay, of course with the help from MDEC. Okay, you need to have access point provider that is accredited by MDEC. Okay, so for the detail of each for this, right, that is summary we will that we explain in here, that we have explained in this slide. We will see in details from this slide on. Okay, so what is PayPal? Okay, this is their logo. PayPal is actually consists of technical specification that can be implemented in any existing ERP system to make them connecting between each other and then across multiple countries. Okay, and PayPal is actually used widely among participant countries such as Australia, Canada, China, India, Japan, now Malaysia, and even our neighbor Singapore, and also USA. And it is extremely secure. Okay, imagine if this is not secure, those countries like China, Japan, India, even Singapore or USA, okay, you know they are very particular with security and everything's right. They will not adopt with this PayPal technology. Okay, and PayPal, right, can only be managed by countries' government authorities. And in Malaysia, PayPal is actually managed by MDEC, our Malaysia Development Corporation. Third character in the summary. Okay, so if let's say for example, right, I come to PayPal and then I said, hey PayPal, I want to register myself as a country, I want to bring PayPal to my country, Malaysia. PayPal will straight away reject you because you are not actually coming from government bodies. So it's as simple as that. Okay, and in order for you to send invoices to PayPal, right, it is actually managed by the access point. Okay, those access points must be recognized by MDEC. MDEC will go a set of rules, a set of strict rule actually, to make sure that those access point that is assigned with them, right, is actually has been authorized by MDEC. And for Sage, right, we are working closely with Sesame. Okay, you will see how actually those three and include LHDN, right, how actually they are connecting to each other in the next slide. I will explain to you, don't worry. Okay, so how e-invoicing works in Sage X3 with the help from PayPal network. Okay, as I mentioned to you, we have two government bodies in here. One is MDEC, another one is LHDN or LHDN Malaysia or IRB. Okay, so this section, LHDN section, they will actually managing the API, managing the tax information, the e-invoice that you submit to them with the tax information. Okay, and we have MDEC, whereas basically MDEC will bring PayPal to Malaysia. MDEC is working closely with PayPal network to bring PayPal to Malaysia. Okay, then we have Sesame as our access point. Again, in order to become an access point, you need MDEC accreditation. So all these four characters, all these four government bodies and private bodies, right? They are actually working together. Okay, then back to the question again. How actually the e-invoicing work in Sage X3 with the PayPal network, of course. Okay, so first, you as a supplier, you are using Sage X3. Okay, you will need to issue an e-invoice in Sage X3. Okay, then after your invoice has been issued, right, you will click on the send button. Okay, to send your e-invoice to Sesame. Okay, Sesame will receive your e-invoice and then it will submit to your e-invoice to LHDN API for validation. And from the API itself, it will go to the LHDN server, okay, to validate your e-invoice. Okay, and if your invoice is okay, everything was okay, no issue and everything, it will actually return a validated e-invoice. Even if your invoice got error, right, it will also return what are the status of your e-invoice and where are the error is coming from. Okay, don't worry, we will capture this in during the live session later. Okay, and after your invoice has been validated, you get the UUID, unique identification number, that is belong to your e-invoice. Okay, the reason why the UUID is coming in, unique identification number is coming in, is because LHDN want to make sure that your validated e-invoice will not get tampered by anyone. Okay, it specifically belong to your invoice. Okay, and from the written validated e-invoice, right, it will actually brings back to your Sage X3 screen. So you will see from your screen what happened to your invoice, what are the status of your e-invoice that you have sent to LHDN. Okay, and after the invoice has been validated, right, Sage X3 will convert it into a into a QR code. Okay, and then embed this QR code into your report. So when you're printing your report, right, the QR code will be displayed nicely in your report. Then you can share those report with your buyer. Okay. All right. So one of the beauty, right, another reasons why we are go for PayPal network is because in PayPal, you can actually receive invoices from your buyer or your buyer. If let's say you are the buyer using Sage X3 and Sage, Sage is using PayPal. Okay, if your actually supplier send your e-invoice via PayPal, okay, then we can actually grab those invoices and then import into your Sage X3. But the receiving of e-invoice, it will be only covered in the phase 2. We will only cover this in phase 2. Okay, so at this moment, up to this, and here is actually in the phase 1. We will see it later during the Sage X3 timeline. Where are we now and what is our next phase to continue for the development of this Malaysia e-invoice. Okay, all right, so getting ready for the Malaysia e-invoice. What need to be done from your side? Okay, some of the checklists, we have prepared some of the checklists for you to look into it, and then so that when you come back from this webinar, you basically have some idea what are the information you need to fill in. Okay, so number one, right, you have to work with your partners in Sage X3, okay, to make sure that your Sage X3 version has at least in version 12 patch 32 onwards. Why? Because for this Malaysia e-invoice in Sage X3, right, we are actually start development from version 12 patch 32. If you are using lower versions, right, then maybe you need to consult with your partner. Okay, and you also need your partner helps to install the patch for this Malaysia e-invoice into your Sage X3 environment. Okay, and your company information. Yes, as I mentioned to you, Sage X3, we are using PayPal. And in order for PayPal to send in invoice, right, they require a PayPal ID. Okay. Before you even start using this Malaysia e-invoice, you need to get yourself a PayPal ID. How? Sage actually, don't worry, because our Malaysia e-invoice in Sage actually, right, we are actually having a registration form so that you can actually click on the register button and you will get your own PayPal ID assigned to you. Okay, I will show you in later slide, during the demo session, okay, so that you know how actually to get a PayPal ID for yourself. Okay, and get your company BRN, business registration number, TIN, and also SST tax number. Okay, for point number 2, 3, 4, right, is actually a mandatory criteria required by LHDN. Okay, you have seen this required field from LHDN, whereas it requires supplier TIN number, supplier BRN number, everything. Okay, don't worry, as I mentioned to you, all this information is actually in a one-time setup. You just need to set up in a one time, and then after that, in a subsequent, after you want to send your e-invoice, right, you don't have to do anything. System will actually capture it from your company master screen. Okay. Next, shipping information. Okay. If your ship to information, right, ship to address is different from your company address, you will also need to get your ship to BRN number, TIN number, and also tax identification number, and also SST tax number. Okay, get your tourism tax number if they are applicable. Okay, if you have a tourism tax number, you need to get it as well. And if you are actually, your company is actually exempted for tax, right, you need to get yourself a reason for tax exemption. Okay, the last preparation that you need to prepare from your side is actually on the customer information, your buyer information. Okay, number one, you can get their customer PayPal ID. It's not mandatory anyway, but if they're using PayPal, maybe you can start asking them if they are using PayPal, then you can get their PayPal ID if they have. Okay, and second is get your customers BRN, PIN, and also SSC tag number. Okay, this one is very important and it's very critical. It's a mandatory requirement from LHDN actually. Okay, and make sure your customer information and contact person email address is correct and maintained properly in Sage X3 Business Partner Master Screen. Okay, if you are familiar with Sage X3, you will familiar with the Business Partner Master Screen. This is actually a standard screen in X3. You can actually start maintaining your customer information like the contact person, email address, because this is very critical. This is a mandatory from LHDN. So you have to make sure that your customer is ready. Okay. All right. Sage X3 Malaysia e-invoicing timeline. Where are we now for this Sage X3 Malaysia e-invoicing? Okay. So we are basically divided it into two phases. Phase 1, which is enough for you to send your e-invoice to LHDN. Okay. What is covered in phase 1? We will cover PayPal registration. Remember, to get your PayPal ID, you need to register yourself with a PayPal. Okay. Second, sending invoices and get validation status from LHDN. Okay, means that you can actually send your e-invoices directly to LHDN and get a status from them in your X3 screen. Okay, and report printing with QR code attached. You will see how actually Sage X3 Malaysia e-invoice module, right? In the phase 1, we have developed a report printing so that whenever your invoice get validated and is valid some more, okay, you will see when you print the report, the QR code is actually attached on the report. Okay, so we are actually targeting to release a beta to our partner within this week. Okay, and on the next week, on the end of June or first week of July, right, we target to release alpha or final release for this phase 1 Malaysia e-invoice in Sage X3. Okay, so starting from 1st August 2024, it's a mandatory for all taxpayers who have 100 million, especially for the phase 1, right? Okay, we will run our go live support for this phase 1. Okay, and we will also kickstart on the second phase of development for this Malaysia e-invoice. Okay, what is covered in phase 2 Sage X3 Malaysia e-invoice? Okay, we will cover on the self-bill invoice, Okay, I know some of you have a question on the self-bill invoice. Okay, at this moment, we are not covering self-bill invoice. During the phase one release, right, we will not cover on the self-bill invoice. Self-bill invoice will only available by end of December 2024 when we release a second phase for this Malaysia e-invoice. Okay, at this moment, when this is not available in Sage X3 yet, you will need to have, you will probably need to go to My Invoice portal, or you can go to our access point provider portal, which is Sesame, to submit a self-bill invoice manually. Okay, when it is available, yes, you can use Sage X3 to send self-bill invoice. Okay, and we will also cover in the phase two, right? We will also cover receiving invoice from PayPal network. Means that, right? The idea is something like this. If your buyer is using PayPal and they have a PayPal ID, okay, or your supplier is using PayPal, okay, then you can actually grab the invoice and then import it directly into Sage X3 AP module. Okay, but all this one is only available in the phase two, whereas probably on the October 2024, right, we will release a beta release for this second phase to our partner. Okay, and by December 2024, we hope we can have a final release for this phase two. Okay, all right, so some of FAQ before we start our live demo session. What is PayPal ID? Again, PayPal ID is a unique address that allow company, organization, or to interchange and also to send and receive business messages such as e-invoice, e-document. Okay, imagine a PayPal ID is like your company email address or your self email address. It is some things like that. It's a unique number that or unique address that is belong to you. Okay, where do I get the PayPal ID for my businesses? Okay, so if you're using Sage X3, right, the ID is provided by our access point Sesame. Okay, but we do have a registration page, whereas you will see it later how actually you can use the registration page. You can utilize the registration page in Sage X3 to get your own PayPal ID for your company. Okay, and question number 3, can I change the e-invoice once IRBM has validated it? No, the answer is straight away no, because according based from my previous slide, right, I have told you when when LHDN come back to you, they will actually give you a unique identification number. Okay, if you want to cancel this, you need to issue a credit note. Okay, what if I disagree with the invoice from my supplier? Again, you as a buyer have 72 hours time frame to cancel or reject your e-invoice. Okay, with appropriate justification, of course. Okay, and yes, we now moving to the live demo. I will switch my uh, this to Sage X3. Okay, I will start logging to Sage X3 to have a live demo with you guys, how actually the Malaysia e-invoice module works in Sage X3. Okay. All right. So this is the Malaysia e-invoice full process for Sage X3. Okay. We divided into 2 categories in here. One is the setup. This is the area where you can actually do your company setup for TIN, your business partner, your buyer TIN number, SST tax registration number, and so on. Okay. Whereas PayPal payment mapping and PayPal UOM mapping is actually when you send your e-invoice to LHDN. Okay. The reason why we have these 2 mapping is because I know some of you like UOM, unit UOM. Okay, you use kg kilogram, kg equal to kilogram, right? Okay, you use kg as KILO, but for PayPal they don't understand this. They don't understand this KILO when we send to LHDN. Even LHDN also, because LHDN is basically based from PayPal framework. Okay, so when you send to LHDN, right, KILO as your UOM, item UOM, they will straight away reject because it's not recognized by the global standard. Okay. In the setup, first thing first, you need to do your own PayPal registration. Again, in order for you to send e-invoice to PayPal network, right, you need to have a unique PayPal ID, which is belong to your site, belong to your company. So in order to do that, right, you just choose your company, okay, and then click on the register button. Okay, all this information in here, right, is actually maintained in your company master screen. So you don't have to fill in the same information again and again. Okay, you just need to maintain it in your customer master screen. Okay, click on the register button. Okay, then if everything is succeed, you will get a registration succeed. Okay, and Sesame will come back to you with a unique PayPal ID and also some of the information that is required for you to send e-invoice. Okay, so that is for the PayPal registration. Now, company setup. As I mentioned to you, again, I still want to bring you to this required field. These are the information that you need to maintain. I mean, especially for party supplier detail and also buyer details. These are the field that you need to maintain. Okay, so first, your company information. Okay, select your company using this magnification glass, or you just type in as usual. Okay, then it will bring you to this tax identification number, like the PayPal ID. PayPal ID, if your registration is succeed, you will see this PayPal ID in this screen. Okay, and your TIN number, tax identification number, business registration number, your SST registration number. These three, especially these two, you need to fill in. Okay, it's a mandatory for MyLHDN. Okay, and your SST tax registration number. If you are registered, if you have this number, then you need to fill in under this box. Okay, and MSIC code. MIC stand for Malaysia Standard Industrial Code. It is required by LHDN. Actually, if you are not applicable, then just put 000 as not applicable. And if you are exempted from tax, right, then you need to put your tax exemption reason in here. If not, right, you just leave it as blank. Okay, same thing to the tourism code. Okay, if you have this tourism code number, then you need to maintain it somewhere in here, like tourism, blah, 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 and so on. Okay, then you just click on save. Okay, that is for the company setup. Next, we will have business partner setup, whereas these are the place for you to maintain your customer and also your supplier information. Take note on those start with MY. Okay, these are the area, those that we start with MY, these are the area that you can actually use to maintain your business partner for this Malaysia e-invoice. Because this Malaysia e-invoice, it's actually right, is developed specifically for Malaysia. Okay, so that's why we require to have this kind of information for your to capture your buyer information. Okay, once you click done, once you okay with everything, then you just click, you just close the screen, will do. Okay, then the next setup is actually on the PayPal payment mapping and also PayPal UOM mapping. Okay, as I mentioned to you earlier, right? Okay, the reasons why we come up with this setup is because, okay, let's say for example, you maintain credit card, payment type equal to CC, which is credit card. But this CC, right, is not recognized by PayPal, or it's not even a global standard. Okay, so that's why you have to do a mapping. Let's say, for example, this CC is mapped to 54, equal to credit card. Okay, otherwise, right, when you send your e-invoice to LHDN, it will get rejected because LHDN also cannot recognize this CC. What is this CC? Because it's not even a standard that is used by global. Okay. All right. Then the last setup, right, is actually on the UBL XML upload and mapping. Okay. So this setup, I will not go through with you today. Okay, because this is the core module for this Malaysia e-invoice. It is better for you to consult with your partner for this area. Okay, we will have a session with partner probably tomorrow. We will explain to them how actually this UBL XML upload mapping and so on. And of course, if you have questions, right, you can actually consult with your partner. Okay. All right. So enough with the setup. Okay, now we move to the first level, which is on the invoice creation and also sending your e-invoice to LHDN. Okay, so in here, right, you see for the invoice creation, there is a two module that is displayed in here. One is from sales invoice and also customer BP invoice. Okay, if you are familiar with Sage X3, right, these are the two places where you can actually create your invoice and then send to your buyer. Okay, for this Malaysia e-invoice module, we only capture from these two modules alone. Okay, and this sending invoices is where you can actually send your e-invoice to LHDN. Okay, you can actually click on search, that it will display all the invoice that has not been sent to LHDN. Okay, and we go back. I'm a bit deviant actually. Never mind. We go back to the first structure. Okay, in order for you to send your e-invoice to LHDN, you can use these two modules. Okay, click on this sales invoice module. It will actually bring you to standard Sage X3 sales invoice module. Most of you probably very familiar with this module actually. Okay, I just create a new invoice in here. Okay, so invoice number 39 has been created and the status is in here is still not yet submit. Okay, when I go back to this module, sending invoice module, right, here I don't see invoice number 39, but when I click on search, right, invoice number 39 is already appeared in my screen because you basically have created it before. Okay, and also take note, source module we only capture from sales and also BP customer master screen and BP customer invoice screen. Okay, so in order for you to send your e-invoice to LHDN, you just click on send. Sorry, you just click on select and then click on send button. Yes, so if everything is correct, you will get this kind of message: invoices have been sent. Okay, and you will also see your status in here, right, has been submitted. Your invoice status for LHDN column, under LHDN column, has been changed to submitted. Okay, so if you want to know what happened next to my this invoice 39, okay, you can click on refresh status. Okay, it will basically bring you, it will basically refresh your e-invoice, those invoice that you have sent to LHDN. Okay, as you have seen in here, right, invoice number 39 is already valid. Okay, and if I refresh on this one, you will see that your e-invoice status in here also has been changed to valid. Means that, right, LHDN has validated your e-invoice. Nothing is wrong. Okay, remember, after LHDN has validated my invoice, right, I can actually get a QR code. Okay, and take note, those sometimes, right, your e-invoice also got validated invalid. Okay, because of some reason. I will show you in the next live demo. Okay, how actually you can see. Okay, so before we even begin to printing our QR code, right, I just want to show you how actually you can get a summary of your e-invoice. What invoice has been sent so far? Okay, so you will see when you click on send buttons, right, and you click on search, it will display to you all the invoices, all the past invoices that you have sent to LHDN. Like for example, invoice number 17. Okay, I sent it previously, probably yesterday or 2 days before. Okay, and the status is now is valid. Okay, and this is how you can actually get the summary. You can play around with this start date and also end date. Okay, and then for example, I want to see, because we are doing testing quite a lot, and you will see basically there is a lot of invoices actually. You will see the number of invoice that result that is displayed now is up to 56 result, which is meet this kind of criteria. Okay, and if you go to the last, you will see that, yeah, this invoice has been sent on the 5th, on the 30th May. Okay, and those invoices that has been sent out to LHDN, right, you cannot change, you cannot even click on this because it's actually to prevent you from sending the same invoice again and again. Okay, remember, if you send same invoice number to LHDN, your invoice will automatically get rejected because they don't allow any kind of duplication invoice number. Okay, so now I want to see, since I know my invoice 39 has been valid, how actually I'm going to print the QR code. Okay, you go to the next step, which is QR code printing. Okay, it will basically bring you to the sales report printing, where you can actually look for this invoice. If you want to look for this invoice, okay, those invoice, you can see the details, what happened to your invoice. Let's say, for example, this invoice 35, the status is valid. Okay, if I go and print this invoice, right, you will see that in the report itself, there is a QR code attached to this MY35. Okay, because the invoice is valid. Okay, inside this QR code, there is a unique identification number that is written by LHDN. We embedded into this QR code. And even if you scan this report, you are using your mobile phone and then you start using QR code to scan this one, it will bring you to preprod.lhdn. Okay, so basically, right, you will see that the website is still not available. Okay, the reason is simple because the website is still not available yet at this moment. It's still under production. Remember, we haven't go live yet. Our go live timeline is actually on the 1st August 2024. So up until now, LHDN still haven't opened their portal so that you can scan this and then bring it to your portal, something like that. Okay, we don't have control on their portal itself. Okay, this is for the valid invoice. Okay, if your invoice is not valid, right? Let's say, for example, I took invoice number 28. Okay, these are the written message that is written from LHDN. Okay, whatever is written from LHDN is a bit technical. Okay, you can actually consult with your partner to understand what is this and why the information is something like this. Okay, we didn't do any massaging on the message itself because it is purely coming from the LHDN API. Okay, and for those invoice that is invalid, right, if you click on the print, you won't see the QR code generated actually. It's an empty, no QR code. Yes, for the invoice number 28, because the invoice status is invalid, then you will not see the QR code display in your invoice. Okay, so we're done with the live demo. Now we are moving to the Q&A session. If you have questions, right, you may raise it during this time frame. And if you have question, maybe you can pull it, you can type in your question into the chat box. And I think Chitong will help me with the Q&A session. Chitong, do we have any kind of question from audience?
Yes, there's been quite a few questions which I also assisted to reply a little bit over here. Okay, so just to repeat those questions which I've replied, of course I have some which I'll require your assistance, Siti. Okay, so I think the first question is whether the slide that we are doing today will be shared across. Yes, the recording and the deck that we have will be PDF'd and sent after the session is completed. So just wait after the session, the video recording and the slide, the PDF will be sent to all the attendees. Okay. The next one is software vendor required to register with LHDN? Okay, so Sage ourselves as a vendor is registered with MDEC, and CT and team has been also working very closely with LHDN to complete this Sage E-Invoicing, Sage EI module in a sense. It's not a compulsory thing that the vendor does it, because a partner could do it as well, in the sense where to do it, but for our sake, we prefer Sage ourselves to do it, and so that all the partners actually using the same module to be much better in terms of for the customers, and not going by partners in that sense. So that's what we have done, but that's not mandatory. Okay. In a sense where is e-invoicing compatible with Sage version 11? I believe CT have also mentioned it just now. Okay. What we have done is we cannot be doing testing all the way until version 11, or even some of the version 12. So what we have done is we have actually locked down in terms of it is tested and compatible with version 12, patch 32 onwards. Okay, so we just do not have time to do testing for every single patch there is, but for P32 onwards, it's all that's where we are doing testing as well. That doesn't mean that it's not, you cannot install it in P30, but that's something that you or the partner will have to test if it's not. But we highly recommend that you upgrade to P32, so that it's actually tested from us, and it's actually we can confirm that it's compatible and so on. Okay, so if you are on a version before V12 P32, our recommendation is to upgrade it to P32 at least, or if you are upgrading now, then probably on the P35 or 36, which is the latest run right now. Okay.
Chitong,
So yes.
Sorry,
yes.
Can I add in? Okay,
Sure,
if you
go
are using, if you are using version, for example, version 11 in your questions, right? Okay, and you try to install this, we definitely will not recommend you. Okay, that's number one. Number two, for the support, right? I think we are not supporting version that is lower than P32. Am I right, Chitong?
For e-invoicing, yes.
Yes, for the e-invoicing,
okay.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Chitong. You
okay,
can go.
Thanks. Because we haven't tested, so it's difficult. So the next question is, meaning, do we need to integrate X3 with Sesame? So the answer to the question is no. When the module is installed or into your X3 environment, the integration is already completed, and there's no further action needed by the customer to do any further integration component anymore. Okay, so that's the answer. That is there a need for the customer to do further integration with Sesame? The answer is no. So the module is meant to already cover the integration bit by Sage ourselves. Okay, the next question, I think a lot of you would probably ask, this is the one time off, whether how long will it take for the application of the PayPal ID? I'll be frank, everyone. For the next month, I will believe it will take slightly longer because everyone is registering. Okay, so I don't think I want to commit on behalf of Sesame in terms of how long would that take. But ST or Evelyn, do you have a rough estimate in the sense on general? But I'm sure that in the next month it will be much longer than in general. Evelyn, City, do you have any idea on this?
Yes, I'm agree with you, because next month everyone is actually trying to get their own PayPal
so
ID.
in general,
so at this moment, yes, in general, it's still, we hope we can minimize up to 1 week. That is the highest chances for you to get your PayPal ID. But don't worry, you can always email back to us, and we will always assign back to Sesame. We will keep chasing Sesame. If your PayPal ID is still not displayed in your system, then we will keep chasing Sesame for this. Okay, we are working closely with Sesame, and rest assured, we will definitely undertaking your support cases. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So in general, it's 5. We're talking about 5 days, okay,
Yes.
or lesser. But next month is something that everyone knows. Everyone is going one shot. So that's something that probably we want to do this early of the month in July, in that sense, once the GA is out, in that sense. Okay. How do I know that PayPal ID is assigned? So I believe the PEPAL ID, when it's assigned, then basically you will get a notifications or what Siti mentioned just now in terms of it will be updated onto your
Company profile.
company profile as well.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of in the buyer setup, must all the buyers have their own PEPAL ID? So it's not necessary, as what Siti have mentioned. Those if those buyers have the PEPAL ID, that it will be good so that they can be emailed and also automatically transversed over. So the main thing about PEPAL is it's a global network. So if your customer have a PEPAL ID, okay, so which means that the invoice can be automatically flowed to their ERP solution via their PEPAL network, and they do not need to rekey in again. Similarly, if you share your PEPAL ID to your supplier, so the invoice could be straight away built into your system. Of course, this is on phase 2. It's not ready for phase 1, which is on phase 2 will be ready on December. So that you can automatically come into your purchase invoice or your AP invoice in that sense. So that's the purpose of the total e-invoicing network that PEPAL have built for. Okay, but it's not necessary. It's not a mandatory thing to comply with LHDN. Okay. So should I validate invoices before printing and sending to my customer? Yes. So only after LHDN have validated the invoices and supply you with the unique identifier for the QR code, then only that invoice is considered a valid invoice. So after first of, depending on which phase you are in, only after that, then once that hits, so you will need to get the QR code or the UIN basically from LHDN, which means that LHDN have approved it. Then only you can actually send the invoice to your customer as a valid invoice. Okay. So the next question is okay. That's quite a lot of questions. So the next question is basically for an invalid invoice, can amendment be done to the invoice and resend to LHDN? Siti, do you want to cover that?
No, the answer is no, because as I mentioned to you earlier during the first slide, right, LHDN will reject your invoice if the same invoice has been found in their system. Okay, if you send same invoice, okay, let's say for example, you change your invoice and then you want to submit to LHDN. Okay, same invoice number is found in LHDN system, it will automatically get rejected. What you can do, right, you can do a credit note and then issue a credit note and then send to LHDN. Same process like what you did for invoice. Okay.
I think that's true if it's a typical invoice if they want to do amendment. So what if, Siti, what if it's an invalid invoice? There's a problem with the invoice, that's why LHDN have came back with invalid. Can they amend it and send it again?
I think this one you cannot amend. Maybe Evelyn can help me with this question, or something like you can raise a credit note or something.
Evelyn?
Okay, first of all, the status is invalid, right? When it's validated by RHDN.
Yep.
Siti, when you receive the status
Yes.
is invalid, right? So I think because it's your system is, if it's invalid, they can actually make amendment to the invoice itself. Because this is invalid, it has not been recognized as sent. Just now you mentioned that is a checking by LHDN that there will be a duplicate invoice number. So when you resend this same, maybe you make some changes, then you resend this invoice again. That time when you did the test, do the system throw you an error that come back with the
It's a duplicate. Yes, come back as a duplicate.
Then that means it's not possible.
So for this question, I think what we'll do is we'll check again with our development team, and also the Sesame team in a sense. Then we will come back to ask her for this particular question. or probably we'll put it into all the, I think everyone will probably be interested in this question. We will also update everyone on this as well. Okay.
Yes, we will share
The
with
next
you
question.
what are the process you can do when your invoice get invalid or your invoice get invalid status from LHDN. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Next question, Chitong. Thank you.
Yeah. So the next question is our implementation date based on the revenue is actually 1st of Jan, so it's phase 2. Our go live. Okay, so our go live date is August. So for this customer, okay, so if you're on phase 2, your go live date for e-invoicing should be 1st of Jan. So for the August, it's meant for our phase 1 customers, which is revenue more than 100 million. Okay, so if you are on the phase 2 process, phase 2 organization to go live for e-invoicing, then you will be waiting for phase 2, which is 1st of January. So the 1st of August timeline will not be subjected for you. Okay.
Okay,
Will the QR yes.
Sorry, to add in from your explanations, right, Chitong. Okay, for those in the phase 2, it is not your mandatory, it's not your job to actually send your e-invoice to LHDN. Even though you have probably installed Malaysia e-invoice in Sage X3, okay, then you don't need to send your e-invoice to LHDN. If it is mentioned, okay, it will stay as it is. Okay, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to send your e-invoice to LHDN because you basically is still not mandatory to opt for this e-invoice. Okay, Chitong.
Thanks.
Next question, Chitong.
Siti. Yep. The next question is for QR invoice. Will QR invoice be available for bulk email send function? I think I'm not too sure what is bulk email send functions from this asker. So if you can elaborate a little bit more with the next question, that will be good. Okay, in terms of what do you mean by bulk email send function in that sense? Okay, so we go to the next one. Will this session video be sent? Like I mentioned just now, we will be sending the recording to you after the session is completed. Yeah. Okay. The next question is, can you explain again on the MSIC code? Siti, do you want to take this?
Okay, so MSIC code is actually our standard Malaysia, it's a standard Malaysia industry code. Okay, so let me bring you back to this. The MSIC code, you don't have to actually look for your MSIC code because when you fill in your company setup master screen in here, right? Okay, you can actually look for the MSIC code. These are the available MSIC code that is relevant to Malaysia. That is according to Malaysia government. Okay, this MISC code, right, is actually, if I'm not mistaken, it's something that is maintained by custom. Malaysia Custom, Malaysia Royal Custom is something that is related to SST. I'm not really pretty sure what is this MSIC code. I'm not in the position to explain on behalf of custom or on behalf of LHDN, but this is some of the thing that is required by them. If you are familiar with MSIC code, I think you have a better understanding than me probably. If you want to check more, right, maybe you can check with LHDN or maybe you can check with custom, our Royal Custom Department. Okay. Chitong, next question, please.
So is there a cutoff or timeline set by LHDN for them to validate the invoice? So I don't think we want to comment on behalf of LHDN whether how long they will do the validation of invoice. So what we will do is basically we will send them the information, and once they are validated, they come back. So like what you saw just now in the demo, it's pretty quick from LHDN in terms of sandbox. But of course now it's sandbox. We have no one has gone live. But I don't think we want to comment on that portion. We cannot reply this on behalf that is there a SLA in terms of they will validate it by how long in that sense. So I want to reserve this and not comment on this on behalf of LHDN. Yeah. Okay. So the next question is what further action for invalid invoice while the stock has been delivered. I think there's a lot of different possibilities on this. So I would advise that if there is in terms of stock delivered, if there's an invalid invoice, what can you do and so on. I think that's like, I think it's something similar like the invoice item that we discussed about just now. We will check with our development team on this, and we will reply subsequently in that sense. Of course, we will also update all our partners on this item as well. So you may check with the partners on this moving forward as well. Yeah. The question is still coming in. Unfortunately, we are 3 minutes out, so we will take 2 more questions. Don't worry. If we will reply the remaining of the question via email, or if you don't have time enough to send in the questions over here, you can always check with your partners on the questions, and we do have regular sessions with our partners to address this moving forward, as well as we know that in the next 1.5 months is actually quite crucial. Okay, so we'll take 2 more questions in a sense on the question over here. So what is Sage solution during phase 1 period before phase 2 availability for self-billing? Okay, so unfortunately, you will need to do manual entry into either My Invoice portal or the Sesame portal during the session. We like mentioned, the beta we are targeted to be out by October. Okay, we'll try to move as quickly as possible, but as of now, because the phase 1 is not completed yet, we do not want to commit anything in that sense on earlier than December. We will try our best to make sure that most of our customers will not be impacted too long in terms of manual entry. We understand that, but as of now, we cannot commit any earlier for now. We will actually announce later. More nearer to the targeted date, maybe in September and so on, if that date could be fastened in that sense. But right as of now, we couldn't do that. Okay, so in terms of cost of Pepper or Sesame, in the sense that there's a question, all the pricing have been shared with our partners last month. So I hope that all our customers would have already understand in terms of the pricing which is done. So I'll just share a very brief one. Okay, then please reach out to your partners to understand a little bit further. So there's 2 pricing over here. Okay, one is the EI module within Sage itself. Okay, so that's one pricing. Another pricing is based on transactional wise with Pepper/Sesame. So that's by transaction wise, which we already have a package in terms of by 10,000s. So please reach out to your partner so that they can explain further how is that going to be priced for you in that sense. So again, one is by the EI module itself. The other one is which will be built from your partner as well, which is by Sesame. Okay, that's by transaction base, which is per 10,000 transaction for the first one, and then subsequent 5,000 transactions. Okay, so please reach out to your partners to understand further in terms of the pricing, because we have already briefed them last month basically. Okay, we hope to have similar session like today again in July, but we will announce if there's a need in a sense. As I see, there's a lot of questions, but for now we will have regular sessions with our partners. So do reach out to our partners and ask them questions. For those who has already asked a question here, which we do not have time to answer, we will answer that via email. Okay, so thank you for your time. We've already run over time, so thank you very much, and have a nice weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.